Hey, how are you?
I had a wonderful teacher, and I was just a special student at the Art Institute of Chicago, and I came in not knowing what to paint, and so I started painting my paint box, and Ray Yoshida, the painter, said to me, "You're not very interested in that paint box, are you?" And I said, "No." He said, "But you were very interested in the marks you're making." And that gave me the sense that I had the freedom to really explore marks. I could concentrate on the things that interested me and ignore the things that did not interest me, like subject. So when I saw some deer running across a field in Wisconsin, I realized that I really didn't want to render the deer, but I was very, very interested in the pattern, the sort of rhythm that they made when they, as they were running. It was a doe and two fawn. And so I marked that rhythm on a yellow pad, and that became my first etching. And I think just being able to concentrate on the things I cared about made it possible for me to be the kind of painter I am now. I've always cared about abstract work, and I've always been more taken with it because I feel it gets to the heart of the emotional matter, and without getting distracted by likenesses that can sometimes be irrelevant. Not that I don't love some artists who paint from life, but I'm better as an abstract artist. And in 2000, it was a very, very rough time for abstract artists. It was tough. I know in Cuba it was out of style, and it was definitely out of style in the States. And I felt pretty alone. I was painting in my attic in my house, and no one was seeing what I did. And then I moved to the South End, to a studio, and by happenstance, I saw the work of Rigoberto Mena in a small gallery in the South End, and it was abstract work I could respect. And so I had him show me everything that he was doing. And he came, he asked me if I was a painter, and I said I was. He asked to come to my studio. And by then I had moved to a big studio in the South End, and he looked at my work. He said about the studio, he said, "This is my church." And he invited me to go to Cuba. And that was the beginning of our friendship that has lasted almost 25 years so far. What else can I say about my work?
Why don't you discuss the musical component? That was fascinating.
I started, while I was a student at the Art Institute, we were given free tickets to rehearsals of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. And I came in one day from painting. I was covered with paint, and I went up to a box in Symphony Hall. I don't know if a lot of people have had that experience of being sort of full of paint and at Symphony Hall. But it was a wonderful, wonderful performance of St. Matthew's Passion. And I was struck by how there was great structure in it and great emotion, both things that I seek in my work. And it occurred to me that the marks I made were, in a sense, an equivalent of notes, and that the grid that I sometimes draw and sometimes just imagine is equivalent to a staff in music. So that marks, as you can remember from the story about the deer, are dear to me. How they are placed determines rhythm. If they're very close to each other, it seems rapid, and if they're farther apart, there's sort of a slowness that can be there. I'm seeing this picture that Shazi is showing right now. It's called From Rigo to Nick, and it's from about 2006. And I was actually thinking about Rigoberto and also about the French painter Nicolas de Stael. And so I think some of the thickness of the paint is influenced by de Stael, and there's a sense of missing somebody. And perhaps some of the directness is something that Rigoberto and I share.
What I really loved is your story. First of all, there's a huge monograph on the desk. I mean, it is both a big book that we would all be blessed to have. It was absolutely stunning and professional. And I love your story about the Nancy Spiro. Maybe you want to share that one?
Yeah. So this big book is called Then and Now and Then, and its title sort of comes from when I was just starting out as a baby painter, I was imagining myself as a professional and wondering what it would be like. And then as I was painting some of these big paintings, I was thinking about that kid I was. So it has that sort of twin looking forward, looking back. These paintings are paintings that are large scale, too big really for this show. And on average, they're 92, 96 inches high. And they're mixed media. So while the paintings in the show are oil and really evolved just from the first mark, these paintings begin often with an idea. And the very first painting I did that was off the stretcher and that is in the book was from 1989. And some of you may know that the painter Nancy Spiro suggested a job for female painters, which was to make mythology from a woman's point of view. And I went to Strauss's opera of Electra, which is about Electra's rage at the sacrifice of her sister Iphigenia. And Iphigenia this is Greek mythology, so Iphigenia was sacrificed by Agamemnon, her father, because he could not get his boats going in order to start a war. And it made perfect sense to him. If you can't start a war, why don't you put your daughter, sacrifice your daughter on a fiery bier for the gods. And I thought, well, if Iphigenia had been writing the story, it might have been a little different. And so I thought, well, what would Iphigenia do? And I had a bunch of drawings I made called Iphigenia Makes Other Plans. And then finally, it occurred to me that Iphigenia Goes Bowling was the right solution. I had a friend who had been working in the Carter administration, had gotten fired, as all political opponents do, and been replaced when Reagan came in. And she, having been a lawyer, decided that what she really wanted to do was join a bowling team. And she is the only professional athlete I knew, and she was in a women's bowling league. So I borrowed some of her scores, some of her favorite games, some of the rules for women, which were a little peculiar, having to do with how you could dress and how you could talk, and threw those into the painting, and borrowed some bowling pins actually, they gave them to me, the bowling pins, and I used them as to print just 12 pins worth, and I threw a tennis ball at them that was covered with paint. And those the bowling pins were covered with paint, the tennis ball was covered with paint, and that was the beginning of this painting, which is Iphigenia Goes Bowling. So
Good play on the myth. I just found that fascinating. Anything else you want to share?
I want to say that the drawings in the pieces that are most like these off the stretcher paintings are these drawings, and I don't know how clearly you can see them, but they have the drawings on paper that Rigo gave me, that's from Mexico, and wonderful paper, and these are called The Rules of War, this series, because it seems to me that in spite of the fact that there's something called the rules of war, if the first thing that goes in war, that is sacrificed in war, is truth, the second thing are rules of decency and humanity, as Goya made very clear in his Disasters of War series. So these are improvisational in the same way as the big pieces on paper. Things get thrown, things get collaged, whatever happens on them. And that's.
Does anyone have any questions for Joanne? Anything you want to ask her about these works?
I have a question.
Please ask.
I have many questions, but I'm not familiar with the work firsthand. So is the substrata the same kind of paper, different papers? What calls you to use the media, the substrata, the paper? Is it the texture? Just curious.
Yeah, the texture is beautiful, and the color, it's a sort of brown and white color.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and I want to say, just in contrast to the paintings that are in the show, the drawings are about something specific. I mean, they come from this idea. It's not that they don't expand into the daily, but they have this sort of overall intent. Whereas the paintings really, the oils just come. They very much reflect the day that they're painted. So many of them are named for that. They are they're about color and light and feeling in a way that is less verbal, I suppose.
Do we have any other questions? Michelle, you had some comments. Do you want to share them with Joanne?
Hi, Joanne.
Hi.
I loved your show. I was there when you were putting it up, if you remember. And I just commented on the Rules of War series. I just love those. Those are so subtle and beautiful and have, all of this interesting energy going through them.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Any last round of questions we have here for Joanne?
Yes.
We have
Yes.
one from
Can-
Elizabeth.
Okay,
Elizabeth,
hi.
you want to share?
Yes, hi, everybody. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Rigoberto. I just want to know, Joanne, did you and Rigoberto talk about which works that you both wanted? Was there a dialogue between you about which works to bring, which ones to include, how to hang them? What kind of interaction on the appearance of the show and the content?
Well, we had another show in Miami called, also called Old Friends. And we showed very different work in that. And I sort of had some idea that we would be showing the same work, and Rigo said, why don't you show your current work? It seems to me that's a lot about color. And I thought that was, and I thought that was a great idea. So so that's how, but I don't think I said anything to Rigoberto except I pretty much said, I don't think you can mess it up because your work is too good. So
So I have a second question, which is so much of your work is deeply involved with color, and the images you were just talking about, the Rules of War, are almost monochromatic. Can you talk about that?
I have this, I have a funny history. I have a strong history in printmaking. Something I actually share with Rigoberto, and my favorite etchings are usually black and white. So it seems natural to switch back and forth from work that is about color to work that is less about color and more about mark, as that first early etching was about mark.
But these works
that-
are not etchings. These works are direct paintings.
But these are, these works, they're drawings, but they are a lot about mark and a lot about rhythm and a lot about interval and density and inhaling and exhaling. And also, I mean, also about, well, the paintings are something unconscious that just goes on and on. These are about they are, at least in part, about the terribleness of now.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joanne. We'll take one last question if someone has a question they want to share.
Colleen.
Colleen.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Colleen.
Started to type something in and then I just spoke up. But, I would love to hear you talk about the significance of tactile sensations in relationship to the visual experience work and whether that's important to you or not.
Really important to me. Very, very important to me. When I was young, my great aunt had a hands art marble piece, and I remember this was before I thought of myself as an artist at all. Just I remember the pleasure of rubbing my hands across it, and you could not something you can usually. I mean, in a museum, you cannot touch a piece of sculpture, even though that's what you want to do. And I think there's a little bit of that in painting, that the tactile is the evidence of the human. It's in a way me saying, I'm here. I'm right here. And that through the way that you touch, through the brushstroke, or the pencil stroke, or in the case of an etching, through the marking of the stylus, you convey not only that you were here, but also not just your trembling human presence, but also how you were responding to the minute. I guess touch makes it very present.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for all your interest. It's really beautiful to see such an involved audience. Joanne, do you have one last thing you'd like to say to them?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for looking at art. Thanks for looking at this art. Yeah.
And thanks for asking and being interested in what she's doing. It's really a pleasure to see. Rigoberto comes all the way from Havana, Cuba, and it's, for me, the only thing I know about Cuba is what I've seen on TV, and I think about those beautiful cars and the rust on the cars, and Mena, talked about the rust as well. So it's not just me as an American being fascinated by rust. It's also someone in the country and being fascinated by the rust and about the graffiti. So he gives us an insight into a world that for so many years we weren't allowed to know. And I find that fascinating. I have a statement that someone wrote about his work, but first I'd like you to hear from him as well. So please. Mena, you ready to talk? Mena?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to talk about my work, about the influence of the rust and the walls, Havana walls in my work?
I want you, if that's how you want to lead, it's your show. If I just remember speaking to you about that. So if you want to share a little bit about that story, that'd be great. If you want to talk about your relationship with Joanne, that would be great too. However you want to start.
Okay. Yeah, in 2000, I met Joanne. I was showing my work in Boston, and she came and she put attention in my work. I asked her if she was an artist, and okay, I wanted to see her work, and I was super happy because she, for me, in my opinion, she is a great artist, and with a lot of work on paper, printing, engraving, big painting, and at the same time she works in a small painting. It's very interesting how an artist can express her work, her artistic work in big size and a small size at the same time. And okay, in that time, like Joanne mentioned before, it was hard for the abstraction. People, artists in general around the world was taking another way. Installation, photography, and abstraction was a little like old-fashioned. But I remember one artist mentioned that the painting was coming back a little later because it's okay. It never will finish to spread because abstraction is a beautiful way to express the idea. In my opinion, never will stop, never will end. And okay, our relation was good, was beautiful, was helping me to. Okay, I was happy at the beginning for sure because it's Joanne is an abstract American artist with a big. I don't know how to say. She studied in the good university, and she has to, you know how important is American abstraction in tradition and in art. And Cuba is very close from the state, but at the same time, in many ways, politically, was very far. And we love baseball, we love American music, and the Cuban artists, even when the government start at the beginning, they take another way, more Russian, more socialist, more realism, socialist. Is the artists put attention in American abstraction, the artists that were interested in abstraction. Another, of course, took another way. But it's for me, the Havana walls and the rust, like you mentioned before, because we are an island, and very small island, very large, not small, large, and the air is plenty of salt. Is the metal there rusted very easy, and the combination, for example, between the blues and the rust is like orange and air are so beautiful. And also I love the mark that, for example, Mark Toby, Bryce Marden, the informalists in general, Tapi, the Spanish artist Anthony Tapis, and the words the children. I love the words the children. And in general, this is my influence in my work. But it's in this area that we were showing in the painting center, we want to show something with a little more color. And because we show in Miami was a show different. Old Friend, no, was Old Friend 1, maybe this one will be Old Friend 2. It's the same artist showing with the same title, but it's different work. And we wanted to show, for example, war on paper, because for example, I know how important is the paper war in the Joanne career, and she's a wonderful printmaker. Can I say that artist that war on paper? And I also love war on paper, and it's important to me also the war on paper. And we wanted to show on small pieces that the people have the idea about our work. You know, it's a small show. It's not a big show. We don't have too much chance that people know our work, but just a little a small piece or a few pieces work, war on canvas with color, and the war on paper, more graphic work.
I'd like to share this review. Rigoberto Mena has taken a leap forward due to his evident creative maturity. His previous work enjoyed the shadowy atmospheres of our ancient buildings while he listened to the action of the weather in each canvas, as if it were a mirror action. If unquestionable links are observed in it with the precarious structural situation of our cities, now it is preferable to investigate domains less complicit with architecture, although it does not completely renounce it. Perhaps he has become more abstracted. He's become absorbed in a strong introspection that probes his own life in relation to the surrounding environment. And for this, he finds another aesthetic discourse in delimited forms that sometimes recall stones, coffered ceilings, and new elements that he requires for his expression and sensitivity. In his medium and large compositions, he knew how to casually integrate words and phrases, some alluding to that oxidation that obsesses him every day, to which he returns again and again to correct, amend, modify, dissatisfied with the results. In this aspect, there is in some of his pieces a little Jean-Michel Basquiat, more than any other great artist, aware of the marriage of writing and painting. And there is, on other sides, the encouragement of Antonio Tapes. Sorry for my pronunciation. In a new stage of his work, marked by appropriations of diverse language and cultures from all over the world, Mena transmit a strong sensation of experimentation and discoveries, not only in terms of theme and composition, but also in terms of textures, materials, and the openness towards discourses that emerge from his constant action on fabric and metal. Since he is a feverish artist, obsessed with the problematic idea of reaching a place, summit or not, of his career and staying there, contemplating himself. Mena, do you want to discuss that?
Oh, honestly, it's sorry. Sometimes I can get everything, but I have an idea. It's my English is I have trouble to understand everything. I prefer talk about something that if you ask something or people want to know something specifically, I can talk about this.
Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask him?
I'm curious, Rigoberto, because I haven't seen them in person. My impression of the work on the screen is very how you create light feels in a way subtractive, like you almost lift the dark away and then the light is
Shines through.
where traditionally in painting sometimes it's additive, the light is
This is deductive as opposed to inductive.
and I'm just curious, is that true or something you're aware of? Or
yeah, it's about, for example, about the composition. Yeah, I normally I want to be sometimes a little more clean, more zen. In some series that I painted before, it's like a bamboo garden, for example. It's totally different. It's more clean, less element in the composition. But for example, in the painting that you are watching in the screen, is I did some illustration. I paint a lot, and later I was I don't know how to say in English, but it's I was taking off a lot of element and keep just the element I have interest in in show, but it's the process is not so intellectual. The process that normally I paint is more informal, more intuitive, you know. And it's like a big adventure because I never know what will have at the finish. And about the light, for sure, I want to part of the composition that some parts of the world have more light and other dark. And okay, it's like playing with the element in the composition.
Thank you.
I have, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to say that it's interesting to compare the color in the two of you, because Rigoberto's color seems more muted than Joanne's, and it just seems a bit of a yin and yang thing. There's so many similarities, yet your approaches to color are very, very different. And I'm just curious about that. And color as an indicator and a concealment, and I don't mean necessarily deliberate, of character, of personality. Because I know certainly Joanne is a person with great reserve, and yet her paintings are extremely exuberant. And Rigoberto, your work seems much more muted.
Muted. What does mean muted? Muted.
Let me try to think of a
Sorry, it's you know, it's about
reserved.
Restraint probably is good
Restrained.
word.
Yes, restrained.
Okay, yeah, it's no, in my previous work, it's you know, I had prejudice with the color before. My previous work for many years was more, the color was more earth color, more subtle, less color. It's in my idea about color is I was discovering about color later, because okay, for the color is fantastic. Is, you know, it's I have the idea that the color used in the bad way is like a gun in the hand of the children. Is people don't know how to use the color. Is very ugly, but it's a color well used, and because you need to express your feelings, it's incredible. It's have a very strong meaning, and is a big impact in the visual composition for sure.
And Joanne, do you have anything to say about your color? Can you say something about your color and your approach?
I used to, when I started out, I thought a lot about blacks that were very close to each other, whites that were very close to each other, and full color. And I did a lot of paintings that were about those differences and similarities, I guess. And lately, I mean, and I guess in the big paintings also, I thought a lot about those close values. And right now, it's just, I just put some stuff out and see what happens. So I'm not, it's just, on the whole, it's just emotional, I guess. And it happens a little bit without me. Although, I mean, there are some colors I think about together a lot, like yellow and black is one of the, I think there's one painting that has that in this one of the small ones here, I think. So I think about the tension that yellow and black make together and what happens with it, but mostly it's intuitive, I guess. Does that?
Yes. Do you ever start a painting with a color idea? I mean, do you ever just think of something that, well, you say yellow and black.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, sometimes, I'll think, or I'll think about a specific gray or something like that, or I'll have I might have a color in mind. I might say, I want a cadmium red light here, but I don't really pre-mix color at all, practically. I mean, I do a little, but most of the time I just throw it up there and see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions?
I have a question. Yes.
Sure.
I'm fascinated with the one of stones that is incredibly rich in texture and depth. You had it up and now it's disappeared. Not that one, the one that has the warmer, the earth tones. No, that one. I'm particularly fond of stones and shells, and I've spent 20 years coming and going from Cuba, and this piece just sings to me. I see more, well, I'm going to ask the question eventually. I see more than just stones here. I see radiance. I see, well, they suggest people to me. They also suggest individuals or islands, metaphorically islands, which of course Cuba is. And the one could draw many, many meanings from this, but it's like an aerial view from afar, as well as an incredibly rich close-up. So I'd like to hear more about his perspective when he was working on this. Do these touchstones have particular meaning to him?
Hello. Yeah. Hola. Hola. Hi. Hi, everybody. There?
Hi. Yes. See.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
It's when I'm painting, the process is my process painting is I don't have an idea. I work, and it's like an adventure when I start to paint. I don't know exactly what will happen. Even when I have idea, I know the way I want to take, but it's the finish is a surprise, of course. And about the look like an island, I love this part because it's in fact, you know, every man is an island, and
See.
you know, and I came from an island. We are many islands. It's not just one island, and also like the like view from the sky, aerial view. Also, it's beautiful because it look like we are watching the painting from the top. But it's yeah, it's I start to create in form and take off some form when the painting is okay. For sure, at the beginning, this painting was totally different. When we painting one painting is and we finish, we painting like 3, 4, 5 painting at the same time. This is how we mentioned, no? Is this painting could be 5 painting before. If I take a photo from the process, I painted 5 painting different. Oh, it happened to many artists, of course, but it's and okay, it's when I have I say okay, it's finished. I like in this form. It's okay. Don't need nothing more. At least in this moment, no, the painting is finished to me. But it's yeah, I have no idea exactly, and it's the form suggests on bodies or person. You know, it's everything that we have inside. It's because we are talking about or we are painting about our feeling, our soul. And okay, for sure, maybe it's a lot of things inside that are expressing in the painting. But I try hard that don't look like a bodies because I defend my abstraction like I'm very abstract, and but sometimes it happens. It's some people say oh, it look like a person, like a woman and a man, and it's like, yeah, could be.
Mhm.
We
ask-
have time for one more question before we move on to Philip. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I just want to read what Michelle said in the chat before. Michelle said, Michelle thinks that the work is beautiful, so I just wanted to share that. Who'd like to who has a question?
I just have a comment. I think that for Rigoberto, touch is really important too. I think. I mean, it's a beautiful painting that we were just looking at.
Thank you all for your
Thank you.
thoughtful, insightful commentary, and thank you for sharing your work.
Thank you so much.
And now let's move on to Philip Gerstein. Philip was an interesting interview, and his from the press release, we really clarified some of the issues for me. He talks about intervals and also an abstract painter. You need to hear him speak about his influence as well. Very, very interesting. Philip, all you. Philip, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, beginner's mistake. Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to thank Joanne and Rigoberto for inviting me to show with them. I just met Rigoberto, and we probably can share a lot since I came to this country with my family as refugees. I was 19, and anyway, so from another socialist country. Anyway, as for Jan, we go back quite a while, and I adore her color. I think she's. I think the world of her. I think she's one of Boston's treasures, color abstractionist, kind of dean of color abstractionists. Anyway, Jan and I actually had a 2-person show. just this December into January in New York on Lower East Side at Lichten Fire. And I have to confess to designing most of that show myself in terms of what direction it was going to take. And we did the more exuberant side of both of us. And both of us kind of range sort of widely in our visual choices with our work. Some work is more minimal and as you saw, even almost monochromatic with Joanne. We both do just glory in color basically, and so we did the kind of much more exuberant show in December. And for the project room here at the painting center, I checked with Jen and Rigoberto, and they didn't need me to put up work that would be very much like theirs or go in the same direction. So I decided to do a much more what I call post-minimal show. And kind of post-minimal work. The reason I call it post-minimal, I guess, is because in traditional minimal work, there's a lot of repetition and oftentimes a calmness. And I think probably what I do with minimal work is use minimal elements, minimal means to create a much richer impression. So there's a richness to it, which I think is more within our own time in history. I'm very aware of art history. I've started admired it, and when people ask me what kind of work I do, and they are all familiar with abstraction, I tell them that if they like someone like Kandinsky, they will probably like my work quite a bit. So for this show, I had shown in the Painting Center in 2017 in the same project room, and just loved the experience, having a whole room of my own, as it were. And that was kind of right at the beginning of my post-minimal series, which I started the year before. And the work I was showing then was using a lot of using such things as glass beads, and was very meditative in parts. This is kind of more of a flowering of that series, if it is a series indeed, because I don't necessarily think of myself as working in series. Can everyone hear me well, by the way? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So one thing that happened in Boston in September of last year, there was an exhibition called Music and Color at the Piano Factory. There's something called Old Piano Factory here. They have a gallery. So music was right up their sleeve, and I submitted some work. They were happy to accept it, and I ended up being also like in an alcove at 3 paintings that are also in this exhibition. They also just installed wonderful LED lights. So I kind of walked into that room where it was placed, not by me, by the curator, and the work was just vibrating into the whole space, made a color space out of that alcove. And I thought, this is exactly how it should be. And I have a lot of parallels with music, of my own work, and of how abstraction works, how color painting works, in that music vibrates out, it literally vibrates our bodies in the most direct way. While I think painting, especially color painting and color itself, does it somewhat indirectly through what happens in our brain. But since the whole thing with painting is in some ways an illusion, what happens on canvas, it is the vibration is also an illusion, but it's real to us. And music, although the sound and vibration remains in us, it disappears while painting stays. So it has its own advantages, perhaps. So taking that experience forward back last September, I decided to bring paintings that are relatively similar. I mean, if you look at my, if you know my work, if you look at my website, you'll see that I do several directions of abstraction. I decided to make a more similar, I don't know if coherent show would be the word, but anyway, that's how it worked out. And I think it achieved what I wanted out of this, and so far from response of people that I've had at the opening, etc.
I just want to add something that Philip said to me that really stuck with me. He said, because a lot of people paint stripes, and he spoke not about the stripes, but the spaces between them. And that was what was important to him. And that, I've never heard anyone speak about stripes that way. So I found that pretty fascinating. And also, and he told me about a Dylan Thomas poem as well. You want to share that story about Dylan Thomas?
About the stripes, by the way, there is a quote from Tao Te Ching, you know, the ancient Chinese writing scripture in a particular translation that I could read for you. I think that relates. Here's the quote. We shape clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that holds whatever we want. And then further, we work with being, but non-being is what we use. I think that applies somewhat. Yeah, I was speaking with a New York painter actually who works with these kind of linear elements, and she was reluctant to call them stripes. So I thought, well, actually, that's a very, very interesting idea. Why would we concentrate on stripes when the non-stripes are just as important? And in fact, the only reason these linear elements exist is because of the space around them. Otherwise, they wouldn't. And that very much relates to how contemporary science views the world. I mean, if post-Einstein science talks about everything made out of energy. All the material objects around us are just more congealed energy than say the light, which is much more fluid. And in fact, most of objects and things around us consist of space in between electrons and protons, etc. There's much more space than there is actual substance, if there is such a thing as substance in that view. And the light that we see comes in vibrations, in packets, in little packets, in pulses. So everything around us pulses, it moves. Some things we don't see, I mean, a lot of them we don't, some things we do. And that very much relates to how these paintings, which I'm calling in a way interval paintings, can be looked at, and perhaps are looked at, or felt anyway, as one looks at them. And that is, they come in as pulses, as vibrations, and the intervals is what makes that possible. And to me, that also is made more more emotional, more complicated, more rich, more interesting with color, because color is what is why I paint, basically, and what determines these paintings.
Does anyone have any questions for Philip or comments?
Well, I wrote in the chat, how much I love how you're talking about color as vibrations. And because I haven't, been in this space, I'm really curious and wish I could see how that energy fluctuates and changes depending on the scale of your paintings. And I was just wondering what you found and discovered about that relationship.
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. I think most of my paintings are kind of determined by human scale. Something you can hug in a way. So as far as the arms go, kind of thing. See, the scale is in a painting is a bit of a almost misnomer, because it depends on where you're standing. So let's say a painting has a certain distance from which it looks best, but most paintings have a couple of distances. Well, a lot of them do anyway. I remember the experience of being at the Guggenheim with my wife, and I'm looking at some of the paintings in their main collection, and there's this big de Kooning, and I comment to her, that's so strange. I mean, just practically every de Kooning I see works, but this one doesn't seem to. What gives? And she says, "Oh, change your distance." Change my distance. Yes, it works. Taking that experience, to our own paintings is, yeah. So let's say there is a smaller painting, but if you stand very close to it, what is the scale?
Eve, do you want to share your thoughts as well?
Yes, I would like to know more about the painterliness in your paintings, the decisions that you make, where you're coming from on that, what you allow or don't allow, or changes you make. You're working with a number of different mediums, and how does that affect the what your outcomes are for your painterliness? What are you going after when you do that? Because it's very much part of your paintings.
Thank you for your question. I love texture. If you see these paintings in person, and also very much the fuller paintings that Joanne and I showed at Licht and Fire, you'll see how important the texture is for the emotions that you get out of the paintings. One of the paintings, for example, that's in this show, could you cycle through them by any chance? It's the one. It's the one called the Minstrel Show Intermission. Yeah, this one. Oh gosh, you can't see the texture. The two darker green areas up on top, in the top portion, have these kind of black beads in them, and they're literally textural. They look sort of darker, blacker almost, but they're dark kind of iridian green, and that contrasts with relative flatness of the lower portion. Although as you see, those stripes are not solid necessarily, so they also have dimension when viewed. Yeah, texture is really important for me, and I put in all kinds of textural materials, glass beads, crystal texture. There's some new materials that are like post-industrial materials that are made for painters that I've been using also. Anyway,
Could you talk a little bit about the use of the paint? Like some of it's got drips in it, or it's looser, maybe has some medium in it, the water, and it's not that one. If you keep going. No, there was one other one. Yeah, we can look at this one. Back one. Yeah. So you've got you've got the blue that's very transparent, and then it's solid, and you've got painterliness on the edges of all your line work, and I just find it beautiful and very interesting, and I'm wondering, is it just something that's just happening, or are you thinking more about it? Do you change it at all as you're working to make it more? Do you put some control over what you're doing, or is it just it's just what comes out?
Wow, that's a pretty broad question. Thanks, Rose, though. I would say every painting that I do is in its own color schema, and it goes in its own direction. It's unique in that way. This one is more uses more watercolor technique. There was a painting in our December show of Joanne's that was very watercolory. Was it after Pendergast? Right, Joanne? Actually, both she and I use a lot of stuff on the edges. We found have a sort of tendency to work with that. Other than that, I'm not sure what I can tell you. It evolves intuitively at several points. Oftentimes, it reaches a balance. Every painting, and then I have to ask myself, ask the painting if it has done everything it can do. Needs to go further, wants to go further, and then I help it.
Okay, that's good answer. Very good answer.
Do you have any final words, Philip? Because we've gone over, we like to go for an hour, so anyone have any last comment or a final word before we go?
Well, I basically love showing in the project room. I thank the Painting Center and again, Joanne and Rigoberto. We're going to have a closing reception tomorrow from 4 to 6, and I would enjoy everyone who can show up, and thanks everyone who has shown up and seen the work, and thank you everyone who has shown up for the Zoom. It was delightful to have you here.
Thank you all for coming. It's been a pleasure to see you again, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Adios.
Thanks.